"The land remembers what you forget," she warned. And the cowboy knelt in the ashes the first time Eli heard the warning. He did not think much of it. He was a young cowboy with a strong back and a fast horse, and he believed that hard work could solve almost anything. He had grown up on the edge of a small town where the sky looked wide enough to hold all your dreams. The ranch where he worked was his home, and the land was his life. But he was also restless. He wanted to be more than a ranch hand. He wanted to be someone people remembered. Eli's father had once been known in the town for being a good cowboy. People used to talk about how he could calm a nervous horse, or how he could read the weather by the color of the clouds. But things had changed. Eli's father had made a mistake years ago, and after that, the town slowly stopped talking about him. He still worked on the ranch, but the way people looked at him was different. It was as if they could not forgive what happened. Eli had heard stories about his father's mistake, but he did not want to focus on it. He wanted to make his own path. He wanted to prove he was not like his father. He wanted to show that he could be strong, smart, and respected. So he worked harder than anyone else, always trying to push himself beyond his limits. One early morning, when the air was cool and the sun was just beginning to rise, Eli rode his horse to the edge of the town. He needed supplies for the ranch, and he wanted to stop by the small store that everyone used. The store was a simple place, with wooden shelves and a bell that rang when the door opened. It smelled like fresh bread and dried herbs. Inside the store, Eli saw Mara for the first time. She was older, with silver hair pulled back in a loose braid. Her face was lined, but her eyes were bright and clear. People in town respected her because she had lived through many hard seasons. She knew the land like she knew her own hands. Mara was not the kind of person who spoke a lot. She listened more than she talked, but when she did speak, people paid attention. She had a way of saying things that made you feel like you were hearing something important, even if it sounded simple. Eli had heard people mention Mara before. They said she had been through droughts, storms, and years when the land did not give much. She had seen families struggle, and she had watched the town change. She knew how to survive when things were hard. When Eli walked into the store, Mara was sitting at a small table near the window. She was holding a cup of coffee and looking out at the land. Eli nodded politely, then walked to the counter to pay for his supplies. He was in a hurry because there was always work waiting for him back at the ranch. Mara watched him for a moment, then she called out softly, "You're in a rush again." Eli turned. He was not sure what to say. He did not know Mara well, and he did not like the idea of someone noticing his habits. But he answered politely anyway. "Always. There's always something to do." Mara nodded slowly, as if she understood. Then she said, "The land remembers what you forget." Eli paused. The words sounded strange to him. He did not know what she meant. He thought it was just a saying, like something people said to sound wise. He tried to ignore it. But Mara did not stop there. She looked at him directly, her eyes steady. "You can forget things," she said, "but the land does not forget. It holds on to everything." Eli felt a small chill run down his spine. He did not like the feeling of being spoken to, like a child. He was a man now. He had responsibilities. He had a job to do. He did not need advice from someone who seemed to live in the past. So he smiled politely and said, "I'll remember." Mara's face did not change. She did not smile. She only nodded. "Good," she said, "because someday you will need it." Eli left the store feeling slightly annoyed. He did not understand why Mara's words bothered him so much. He thought about them for the rest of the day, even though he tried not to. When he returned to the ranch, the work was waiting. The ranch was large, with fields of grass and a few wooden buildings. The sun was rising higher now, and the air was warming. Eli had to check the fences, feed the animals, and make sure the water troughs were full. He moved quickly, his body strong from years of working outdoors. He had learned many skills from his father. His father had taught him how to handle the animals, how to ride without losing control, and how to fix broken fences. Eli respected his father for these things, but he also wanted to prove he could do more than just follow in his father's footsteps. He wanted to be seen as his own person. The other workers on the ranch were older and slower. They had been doing the same work for years. Eli often felt impatient with them. He wanted things to move faster. He wanted to make improvements. He wanted to modernize the ranch and make it more efficient. He believed that if he worked hard enough, he could change everything. That evening, Eli's father returned home from a long day. He looked tired, and his eyes seemed to hold a sadness that he did not show to anyone else. Eli watched him quietly as he sat on the porch, staring at the land. Eli approached him. He wanted to talk, but he did not know how. His father had never been the type to share feelings. He was quiet and serious, and he believed that emotions were a weakness. Eli respected that, but he also wished his father could be different. "Are you okay?" Eli asked. His father did not answer immediately. He looked at his son for a moment, then he said, "The land is dry." "It's been dry for a long time." Eli nodded. "We can handle it," he said. "We always do." His father looked at him with a small, tired smile. "Yes," he said. "We always do." Then his father added, "But sometimes we forget what we should remember." Eli felt a strange feeling again, like Mara's words were returning. He did not want to think about the past. He wanted to focus on the future. That night, Eli could not sleep. He lay in bed and stared at the ceiling. He thought about the land, about the ranch, and about the people who lived there. He thought about the way the town looked when the sun went down, quiet, peaceful, almost like nothing could ever go wrong. He also thought about his father. He thought about the way people looked at him. He wondered if the town would ever forgive him. He wondered if his father would ever be free of the past. The next morning, Eli woke up early. He went outside and walked toward the field. The air was cool, and the sky was clear. He watched the grass sway gently in the wind. He listened to the sounds of the ranch, the animals, the birds, the soft creaking of the old fence posts. As he stood there, he felt a sense of pride. This land was his life. It was where he belonged. He loved it, even if he did not always understand it. But he also felt a sense of unease. The land seemed quiet in a way that felt too still. It felt like it was waiting for something. Eli shook his head, trying to push the feeling away. He climbed onto his horse and rode out to check the far fence line. He moved quickly, determined to get the work done. He was not going to let anything slow him down. He thought about Mara's words again, but he tried to dismiss them. He told himself that she was just an old woman who liked to talk in riddles. He told himself that the land was just land, and that people were the ones who made history. But deep down he could not ignore the feeling that something was changing. The land was quiet, but it was not peaceful. It felt like it was holding its breath. Eli returned to the ranch later that day and saw Mara again. She was standing near the edge of the field, watching the sky. Eli slowed his horse and approached her. Mara looked at him and said, "You're still thinking about what I said." Eli nodded. "Yes," he admitted. Mara's eyes softened slightly. "Good," she said. "That means you are listening." Eli swallowed. He did not know what to say. He wanted to be strong, but he also felt like he was losing control of something he could not name. Mara continued, "You can work hard and build a life, but if you forget the past will come back. The land remembers. It remembers every mistake, every careless act, every choice that was made without thinking." Eli felt the words settle in his chest. He did not want to hear them, but he could not deny that they were true. He looked out at the land, and for the first time he saw it differently. He saw the way the soil looked dry and tired. He saw the way the fences leaned slightly, as if they had been weakened by years of neglect. He saw the way the trees looked thin and worn. He realized that he had been so focused on the future that he had forgotten to care for the present. Eli nodded slowly. "I understand," he said. Mara did not smile, but she looked satisfied. "Good," she said, "because the land is not just a place. It is a memory, and if you do not remember, it will remind you." Eli left her there and rode back to the ranch. He felt a new sense of responsibility. He knew that he could not ignore the past anymore. He knew that he had to pay attention to the land and to the people who had lived on it before him. He still did not know what would happen, but he knew one thing for sure. Mara's warning was not just a saying, it was a truth. And as the sun began to set, Eli stood on the porch of the ranch house and looked out at the land. He felt the weight of the words in his mind, and he realized that his life was about to change in a way he could not yet understand. After the warning from Mara, Eli could not stop thinking about the land. He tried to focus on his work, but the words kept returning to his mind like a song that would not leave. The land remembers what you forget. He did not fully understand it, but he could feel that it meant something important. The next day, Eli woke up early again. He decided to check the old storage barn on the edge of the ranch. The barn had been there for many years, and it held tools, supplies, and old items that no one used anymore. Eli's father had always told him to keep the barn organized, but it had been neglected for a long time. The roof had small holes, and the walls looked weak. Eli walked to the barn and opened the door. Dust rose in the air, making him cough. The smell of old wood and dried grass filled the space. He stepped inside and saw a pile of old boxes, broken tools, and a few pieces of furniture. He knew that his father had once used the barn for storing important things, but now it was just a place where time seemed to stop. Eli began to clean. He moved boxes, swept the floor, and tried to make the space usable again. As he worked, he found an old notebook tucked away in a corner. The cover was worn and faded, and the pages looked fragile. He opened it carefully. The notebook belonged to his father. Eli recognized his handwriting instantly. It was neat and careful, the way his father wrote when he wanted to remember something important. Eli felt a sudden rush of curiosity. He had never seen this notebook before. He sat down on a crate and began to read. The first pages were simple. His father had written about daily tasks, like fixing fences or checking the water. But as Eli read further, the writing became more serious. His father had written about the weather, about the way the land looked, and about how the town had changed over the years. Eli felt his heart beat faster. He had never known that his father had kept a journal. He had never known that his father had thought so much about the land and its history. Then Eli found a page that made him stop. It was a page about a fire, added to the charge of a common kind of companion. From the surrounding mystery from our son Bob and genre, and from our college, the page companion tree. His father had written about how the fire had been small at first, but how quickly it had grown. He wrote about how the wind had carried the flames, and how the dry grass had fed the fire like a hungry animal. Eli's hands shook slightly as he read. He had heard about the fire before, but he did not know the details. He had always thought it was just a small event, something that happened and then was forgotten. But his father's writing made it clear that the fire had been serious. It had caused damage. It had changed the ranch. Eli read on. His father wrote that the fire had been started by a careless mistake. A worker had left a small campfire burning near the grass. The fire had seemed harmless, but it had grown in the night. By the time anyone noticed, it was too late to stop it. Eli's heart felt heavy. He could not believe that someone had been so careless. He could not believe that the land had suffered because of a simple mistake. But the most important part of the page was not the fire itself. It was what his father had written after. His father wrote about how he had tried to fix the damage. He wrote about how he had worked hard to rebuild the fences and plant new grass. He wrote about how he had felt responsible, even though the mistake had not been his. Eli read the words carefully. He felt a new understanding growing inside him. He realized that his father had not only been a strong cowboy, he had also been someone who cared deeply about the land. He had tried to protect it, even when others had made mistakes. Eli closed the notebook slowly. He sat there for a long time, thinking. He felt a strange mix of emotions. He felt anger at the person who had caused the fire. He felt sadness for the land. He also felt a deep respect for his father. He realized that the town had not forgotten the fire. It was still part of the land's memory. The land had remembered. The grass had grown back, but the memory of the fire was still there, hidden in the soil. Eli stood up and looked around the barn. The air felt different now. It felt heavier. He understood that the land was not just a place to work. It was a place that held memories, and those memories could shape the future. When he returned to the ranch house, he found his father sitting on the porch, staring at the fields. Eli approached him carefully. "Dad," Eli said softly, "I found your notebook." His father looked up slowly. He did not seem surprised. He had always known that Eli would find it one day. Eli sat down beside him. "I read about the fire," he said. "I didn't know it was so serious." His father's eyes grew distant. He nodded slowly. "It was serious," he said. "And it was not just the fire. It was what came after." Eli waited for his father to continue. He could see the sadness in his eyes, but he did not know what it meant. His father sighed. "The fire was not the only problem," he said. "After it, we had to rebuild. We had to work hard. But the real problem was that we forgot what the land needed." Eli frowned. "What do you mean?" His father looked at him and said, "We thought the land would always be there. We thought it would always recover. We thought we could keep pushing it without giving it time to heal." Eli felt a small sense of guilt. He realized that he had been thinking the same way. He had been pushing himself and the ranch without thinking about the long-term effects. His father continued, "We also forgot that the land is not only for us. It is for the animals, the plants, and the people who will come after us. If we take too much, it will take something back." Eli listened carefully. He felt the truth in his father's words. He realized that his father was not just talking about the past. He was talking about the future. Eli looked out at the fields again. He saw the land in a new way. He saw the dry patches, the weak fences, and the tired soil. He saw the land as something that needed care and respect. His father placed a hand on his shoulder. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "I should have taught you this sooner." Eli shook his head. "No," he said. "You taught me everything I know. I just didn't listen." His father smiled slightly. "Maybe now you will," he said. That evening, Eli returned to the barn and continued cleaning. He felt a new purpose. He wanted to do something to help the land. He wanted to make sure that the mistakes of the past did not happen again. He decided to create a plan. He would repair the fences, plant new grass, and improve the water system. He would talk to the other workers and the people in town. He would share what he had learned from his father's notebook. Eli knew it would not be easy. It would take time and effort. But he felt ready. He felt like he was finally beginning to understand the meaning of Mara's warning. That night, as he lay in bed, Eli thought about the fire and the notebook. He thought about the land and its memory. He realized that he had been trying to forget the past, but the land had never forgotten. He understood that the land was not just a place to work. It was a living memory, and it would always remember what people tried to forget. Eli closed his eyes and made a promise to himself. He promised that he would listen to the land. He promised that he would respect it. And he promised that he would never forget what his father had taught him. After reading his father's notebook, Eli felt a new kind of responsibility. He could no longer ignore the past. He could no longer pretend that the land was only something to work on. The land was something to listen to, and now he understood that the land would always remember. Eli began to work differently. Instead of rushing through his tasks, he slowed down. He took time to look at the fields, to notice where the soil was dry and where it was strong. He watched the animals more carefully. He paid attention to the small signs that the land gave. At first, the other workers did not understand. They had been working the same way for years, and they were used to doing things quickly. They did not think about the long-term effects of their work. They did not think about the land's memory. One morning, Eli gathered the workers near the barn. They were surprised because Eli rarely spoke in front of everyone. He had always been quiet, focusing on the work rather than on words. But now he felt that he needed to say something important. "Listen," Eli said. "I found my father's notebook. It talks about a fire from years ago. The fire happened because someone left a campfire burning. The land was hurt. And I think we are still feeling the effects." The workers looked at each other. Some of them nodded, as if they had heard the story before. Others looked confused. One of them, a man named Tom, spoke up. "Ellie," Tom said, "the fire was a long time ago. The land has healed. Why are you bringing it up now?" Eli looked at Tom calmly. "Because the land remembers," he said, "and I think we have forgotten how to care for it." Tom shook his head. "We have always cared for it," he said. "We work hard." "We do what we can." Eli nodded. "I know," he said, "but maybe we can do more. Maybe we can do things differently." The workers listened quietly. They were not used to being asked to change. They were used to doing what they had always done. Eli continued, "I want us to repair the fences properly. I want us to plant new grass in the dry areas. I want us to make sure the water system works well. And I want us to take turns checking the land, not just once, but often." Some of the workers looked interested. Others looked worried. Change is always difficult, especially when people have been doing the same work for a long time. That evening, Eli spoke with his father again. He told him about the plan. His father listened carefully. "I'm proud of you," his father said. "But you need to understand something. The land is not the only thing that remembers." Eli looked at him. "What do you mean?" he asked. His father sighed. "People remember too," he said. "And sometimes they do not want to remember. They want to forget. They want to move on. They think that forgetting will make things easier." Eli nodded. He understood. The town had been trying to forget his father's mistake. They had been trying to act like it never happened. But the land had not forgotten. The land had held on to the memory, quietly beneath the surface. His father continued, "The problem is that when people forget, they often repeat the same mistakes, and the land is the one that pays the price." Eli felt a heavy feeling in his chest. He realized that his father was right. The land had been hurt before, and it could be hurt again. The next day, Eli began the work. He and the workers repaired the fences. They replaced old posts with new ones. They tightened the wires. Anyhow were a howl were a howl. They made sure the fences were strong and safe. As they worked, Eli noticed something. The workers were not just fixing the fences. They were also talking. They were sharing stories about the land. They were remembering the past. One worker, a woman named Sarah, told a story about how her grandmother had taught her to plant trees in certain places to protect the soil. Another worker, an older man named Joe, spoke about the way the town used to celebrate the harvest season with music and food. The workers began to remember things that they had not thought about in years. Eli realized that this was important. The land was not the only thing that remembered. The people remembered too, and by remembering together, they were creating a stronger connection to the land. But the work was not easy. The land was still dry in many places. The soil was hard and cracked. The grass was thin. The water was low. The ranch had been through hard times, and it would take time to recover. Eli and the workers worked long hours. They were tired. They were hot. But they kept going. They believed that what they were doing mattered. One afternoon, Eli noticed smoke in the distance. It was a small cloud, but it stood out against the clear sky. He felt his heart beat faster. He rode his horse quickly toward the smoke. As he got closer, he saw that it was a small fire near the edge of the ranch. The flames were small, but the smoke was rising. Eli felt a wave of fear. He remembered his father's notebook. He remembered the warning. He remembered the land's memory. He acted quickly. He gathered the workers and told them to bring buckets and water. They worked together, moving fast and carefully. They put out the fire before it could grow. When the fire was finally out, the workers stood in silence. They were relieved. They were also shaken. They realized how quickly a small mistake could become a disaster. Eli looked at the burned patch of grass. It was small, but it was a reminder. It was a reminder that the land was still vulnerable. It was a reminder that the past could return if people were not careful. That night, Eli returned to the ranch house and sat with his father. He was quiet for a moment, thinking about what had happened. "Dad," Eli said, "I understand now. The land remembers, and so do people." His father nodded. "Yes," he said, "and now you know why I was so worried. I wanted you to learn before it was too late." Eli looked at his father with new respect. He realized that his father had not been weak. He had been wise. He had been trying to protect the land and the people he loved. The next morning, Eli went to the town and spoke with Mara. He told her about the fire and how the workers had stopped it. Mara listened quietly. When he finished, She said, "You did well." Eli felt a sense of pride, but he also felt something else. He felt the weight of responsibility. He understood that the work was not finished. It was only beginning. Mara looked at him and said, "The land will test you. It always does. It will test your patience, your strength, and your choices. But if you keep listening, it will guide you." Eli nodded. He felt like he was finally beginning to understand. He felt like he was becoming the kind of person his father had hoped he would be. That night, Eli stood outside and looked at the stars. The sky was clear and the stars looked bright. He felt a calm feeling inside him. He knew that the land was still watching. He knew that the land was still remembering. But he also knew that he was not alone. He had the workers, his father, and Mara. He had the town. He had the land itself. Eli smiled softly. He felt ready for whatever would come next. After the small fire near the edge of the ranch, Eli felt a new kind of respect for the land. He realized that even a small mistake could cause big problems. He also realized that the land was not something he could control completely. It was something he had to work with. Eli continued to work on the ranch, but he also started to notice things he had never seen before. He watched how the wind moved through the grass. He watched how the water flowed in the small streams. He watched how the animals moved and where they chose to eat. He learned to see the land as a living system, not just a field to ride across. The workers also began to change. They started to care more about the land. They talked about the land's history and the lessons it had taught them. They shared stories and memories. They laughed together. They began to feel like a team, not just a group of workers. Eli's father was proud of the changes, but he also worried. He knew that the land could be unpredictable. He had seen how quickly things could go wrong. He had lived through years when the weather was harsh and the land was dry. He knew that the ranch was still at risk. One afternoon, Eli received news from town that worried him. The river that ran near the town was getting lower. The water level was dropping faster than usual. People in town were starting to worry. They were talking about the possibility of a long, dry season. Eli knew that this was serious. Water was the most important resource on the ranch. Without water, the land could not grow. The animals could not drink. The whole town would suffer. Eli decided to act. He gathered the workers and told them about the river. He explained that they needed to save water and use it carefully. He suggested that they fix the water system and make sure there was no waste. He also suggested that they plant trees near the river to help protect it. Some of the workers listened carefully. Others were skeptical. They had lived through many dry seasons before. They had seen the river go low and then return. They did not want to worry too much. They wanted to believe that things would be okay. Eli knew that hope was important, but he also knew that action was needed. He could not wait for the problem to become worse. He had to act now. He worked with the workers to repair the water system. They fixed broken pipes and cleaned the water tanks. They made sure the water was being used efficiently. They also began to plan how to save water for the dry months ahead. During this time, Eli visited the town often. He talked to people about the river and the land. He tried to explain that the land was not something to be used without care. He told them about the fire and the land's memory. He told them about the notebook and his father's lesson. Some people listened. Some people did not. Some people said that Eli was too young to understand. Some people said that he was trying to change things too quickly. They thought he was only trying to make himself look important. Eli felt frustrated. He wanted to help, but he felt like he was alone. He felt like the town did not understand the urgency of the situation. One day, Eli returned to the ranch and found his father sitting alone on the porch. His father looked tired. He looked older than before. Eli sat beside him. "What's wrong?" he asked. His father looked at him and said, "I'm worried about the town." Eli nodded. "I know," he said. "The river is low. We need to act." His father sighed. "Yes," he said. "But people are not ready to change. They want to live the way they always have. They don't want to think about the future." Eli felt a pain in his chest. He understood. It was hard for people to change. It was hard for them to think about what might happen in the future. His father continued, "Your mother used to say something. She said, 'The land is like a family. If you do not care for it, it will suffer. And when it suffers, everyone suffers.'" Eli listened carefully. He had never heard his father speak about his mother before. His mother had passed away when Eli was young, and his father rarely spoke about her. Hearing her words made Eli feel a strong connection to the past. He realized that his mother had also understood the land's memory. She had understood that the land needed care and respect. Eli felt a new determination. He decided that he would not give up. He would continue to work for the land and for the town, even if people did not understand. The next day, Eli organized a meeting in the town hall. He invited everyone, including the workers, the farmers, and the town leaders. He wanted to share his ideas and explain why the river was important. At first, the meeting was quiet. People were hesitant. They were not sure what to expect. But Eli spoke calmly and clearly. He told them about the river and the land. He told them about the fire and the lesson from his father's notebook. He told them about the warning from Mara. He said, "The land remembers what we forget. If we do not care for the land, it will remind us. We cannot ignore the signs. We cannot pretend everything is okay." Some people nodded. Others looked unsure. One man stood up and said, "Ellie, we have lived here for many years. We know how to survive. We do not need to be told what to do." Eli listened without anger. He knew that people were afraid. He knew that they did not want to be told they had been careless. He knew that they did not want to admit that the land was suffering. He responded gently. "I am not trying to blame anyone," he said. "I am trying to help. We need to work together. We need to care for the land, because it cares for us." The meeting continued. Some people began to share their own ideas. They talked about ways to save water, ways to plant trees, and ways to protect the river. Slowly, the mood in the room began to change. People started to realize that they could make a difference if they worked together. By the end of the meeting, a few people had agreed to help. It was not a big group, but it was a start. Eli felt hopeful. He knew that change would take time, but he also knew that the first step had been taken. After the meeting, Eli returned to the ranch. He felt tired, but he also felt proud. He knew that he was doing something important. He knew that he was making a difference. That night, Eli walked outside and looked at the river in the distance. The water was low, but it was still there. He thought about the land and its memory. He thought about the people in town and their fears. He realized that the land would continue to test them. It would test their patience and their willingness to change. But he also realized that the land would reward them if they cared for it. Eli felt a sense of peace. He knew that the road ahead would not be easy, but he also knew that he was not alone. He had his father, the workers, and the people who had agreed to help. He thought about Mara's words again. "The land remembers what you forget." He now understood that it was not just a warning. It was a reminder of a truth that everyone needed to hear. Eli returned to the ranch house and sat with his father. They did not speak much. They simply sat together, listening to the sounds of the land. The wind, the animals, the quiet night. Eli felt a deep connection to the land, and he knew that the land was connected to him. He knew that he could not ignore it. He knew that he had to remember, because the land would always remember. The days after the town meeting felt different. Eli could feel the change in the air like a small shift in the wind. It was not a big change, but it was real. A few people had agreed to help, and the workers on the ranch had started to take the land more seriously. Even the younger children in town seemed to notice the new energy. They asked questions, they watched the workers, and they talked about the land in a way they never had before. Eli felt proud, but he also felt a weight. He knew the change was not easy, and he knew that the land would not heal quickly. He also knew that the land would continue to test them. The land did not forgive carelessness easily. One morning, Eli woke up to find his father standing outside, holding a small bundle of seeds. The seeds were different from the usual ones. They were tree seeds, the kind that could grow into strong, tall trees. Eli's father had always been quiet about his feelings, but now he looked hopeful. "These are for the river," his father said. "We need to plant trees along the banks. They will help keep the water cool and protect the soil." Eli smiled. He felt a warm feeling inside. He had never seen his father so open and hopeful. He took the seeds and said, "Let's do it." They gathered the workers and walked to the river. The air was warm, and the river flowed slowly. It was not a strong river, but it was still alive. Eli could see small fish swimming near the rocks. He could see birds resting on the branches. The river was a living thing, and Eli felt grateful that it was still there. They began to plant the seeds carefully. They dug small holes, placed the seeds inside, and covered them with soil. They worked together, quietly and respectfully. No one rushed. No one complained. They all understood the importance of the work. As they worked, Eli noticed something that surprised him. Some people from town had come to help. They were not many, but their presence meant something. It meant that the town was starting to listen. It meant that the land was starting to be respected. A woman named Maria, who owned a small bakery in town, was among them. She had always been kind, but she had never been very involved in ranch work. Now she was there, digging holes and planting seeds. "Why are you doing this?" Eli asked her. Maria smiled and said, "Because I want my children to grow up with water. I want them to see the river and know that it is part of their life. I don't want them to only hear stories about it." Eli felt a strong emotion. He realized that the work was not only for the land, it was for the future. It was for the children and the people who would live there after them. They finished planting the seeds, and the group sat by the river for a moment. They watched the water flow and listened to the sounds of nature. It was a quiet, peaceful moment. It felt like a small victory. After that day, the work continued. The town began to take more steps to protect the land. People started saving water at home. They fixed leaks. They planted trees. They talked about the land with their families. They began to see that the land was not just a place to live, but a part of their lives. Eli felt a deep sense of connection. He felt like he had finally found his place. He had always wanted to be someone people remembered. Now he realized that the best way to be remembered was not through power or fame, but through care and responsibility. One afternoon, Eli went to see Mara. She was sitting by her small garden, tending to her plants. She looked up when Eli approached and smiled softly. "You have done well," Mara said. Eli nodded. "I could not have done it without your warning," he said. "I didn't understand at first, but now I do." Mara looked at him with kind eyes. "The land teaches those who listen," she said. "And you listened." Eli felt a sense of peace. He thought about how he had once been so focused on proving himself. He thought about how he had once believed that the past did not matter. Now he understood that the past was part of the present. He remembered the fire, the notebook, and the river. He remembered how the land had tested them. He remembered how the town had slowly begun to change. Eli sat with Mara for a while, listening to her stories about the land. She told him about her own childhood, about how the land had been different back then. She told him about the seasons and how the people had once respected the land more. Eli listened carefully. He felt like he was learning something important, something that would stay with him forever. When Eli returned to the ranch, he found his father sitting on the porch, looking at the fields. Eli sat beside him. They did not speak for a while. They simply sat together, listening to the sounds of the land. Then Eli spoke softly. "Dad, I understand now. I understand what you meant about the land and the people. I understand why you were worried." His father looked at him and nodded. "Yes," he said, "you understand." Eli continued, "I am sorry for not listening before. I thought I was strong, but I was only rushing. I was trying to escape the past, but the past was not something I could escape. It was part of the land. It was part of us." His father placed a hand on his shoulder. "It is okay," he said. "We all make mistakes. The important thing is that we learn." Eli felt a warm feeling in his heart. He realized that his father had not only been teaching him about the land, he had also been teaching him about life. He had been teaching him about responsibility, humility, and respect. Days turned into weeks, and weeks turned into months. The land slowly began to heal. The grass grew greener. The soil looked healthier. The river flowed more steadily. The town began to feel more hopeful. People still remembered the fire. They still remembered the dry seasons. But now they remembered, not with fear, but with understanding. They remembered so that they would not make the same mistakes again. Eli continued to work hard, but he no longer rushed. He took time to care for the land. He took time to listen. He took time to learn. One evening, as the sun was setting, Eli rode his horse to the edge of the field. He stopped and looked out at the land. The sky was painted with soft colors. The air was calm. The land looked peaceful. Eli thought about the warning that had started everything. He remembered Mara's words. "The land remembers what you forget." He smiled softly. He knew that the land would always remember. He knew that he would always need to remember, too. Eli knelt in the ashes of the old fireplace, not in sadness, but in respect. He placed his hand on the ground and felt the earth beneath him. He closed his eyes and took a deep breath. He felt the past and the present together. He felt the land's memory, and he felt his own. He felt connected to the people who had lived there before him, and to the people who would live there after him. He stood up slowly and looked at the horizon. He knew that the future would bring new challenges, but he also knew that the land would guide them if they listened. Eli rode back to the ranch, feeling calm and confident. He knew that the land would remember, and he knew that he would remember too. And he understood that the most important lesson of all was not about the land alone. It was about respect, care, and the power of remembering.